17 questions with Bocce. 17 questions with Bocce.
Hi, everyone. This is 17 Questions with Bocce, 8th episode with Little Girl Attorney. Hi, how are you this evening?
Good. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for saying yes. Like, I have always loved watching your things, and I feel like I've learned a lot from you, as well as Not Actually Golden, who was also here in the last episode that I did, and had loved saying your name and bringing you
Aw.
up. So I love the friendship that you both seem to have. And so why don't we just leap into some of these questions? The first one
Sure.
is, especially for those that may not know you, which I highly doubt, because I feel like anybody who's following me already watches your stuff. But in case people don't, what would you say the lens or perspective is that you bring to the case that shapes how you talk about it?
Sure. I mean, the most obvious lens is that I'm a employment defense attorney in California. So I have always been a litigator. I started off litigating financial services lawsuits, transitioned to employment law in California. So I did employment litigation matters in state and federal court. And I mostly, not always, but mostly represented employers in lawsuits brought against them by former or current employees. Now, I have done cases where I represented employees, but it was more rare. And then I also advise companies in house. So I advise employers on how to comply with employment laws. So my lens looking at this case from my training and my experience and what I do every day comes from the fact that I spend 90% of my time advising employers. And I think that makes the biggest impact on how I view the case.
And when people tell you that your content resonates with them, what do you think they're connecting with most?
I've thought about this a lot because I never in a million years would have thought that describing some of these legal procedural matters would resonate with people because the adage used to be like, snore, like legal talk is so boring, and it is, I think, but somehow it's interesting for people in this case. I think my content resonates because I break things down as simple as possible and I show people that they can understand these complex legal matters just as well as an attorney. Just because they aren't an attorney doesn't mean that they can't understand what's going on. And so I think the content resonates because they're able to come along the ride with me and not feel left out of the process.
I love that. And I do feel like having lawyers has been so incredibly helpful, because there are things that me as a non-lawyer, I get excited about, and then it's like, oh, that's just procedural. Oh, that's just regular. That's not something to be excited about. Okay. But it's nice to kind of get back down to earth and be like, okay, I need somebody that actually knows this stuff to explain things. Because I'm like, I love reading the complaints and all that stuff, the narratives around there, but that doesn't mean that I am an expert or understand certain things. And so it's been such a great thing to have.
No, I'm so
There,
happy to hear.
yeah, several folks that I can go, what are they saying about this? How can they help me understand what's going on? What made you decide to start creating content around the Blake Lively versus Wayfarer case?
I mentioned this before in one of my older videos, but it's good to repeat. I didn't have content before this. I did have the little girl attorney kind of name, and I had it for a while. I didn't really do a whole lot with it. And so I really didn't start making content until this case got filed. And the reason I got involved is because people were asking me questions like via text all day long. Obviously it was a big deal. I read the New York Times article. I was already invested. Whenever there's a big employment lawsuit, I'm following it because it's going to impact my work. So I was already watching it from that perspective. And then also some of my friends were like, what does this mean? What does this mean? What does this mean? They were more invested in the detail than maybe they've ever been. And they were asking me because this is the area that I practice in. The CRD, the FIHA laws, like all of that is my bread and butter. And so they were asking specific questions about what does this mean for the parties. So I found myself sending voice notes to friends, texts, like just one time I made a video and I texted it before TikTok, and my friend was like, you could really help other people understand what's going on if you just posted this on TikTok. And I didn't even use TikTok. Like I had a TikTok, but it really was one of those people that you had to text the TikTok to, and I would open it, watch it, and then close it. And I was just not really in it, not for any reason other than I couldn't really handle more than one social media site. And so then some of my friends really encouraged me to make the TikToks that I was already making the voice notes and the videos for them. They're like, just post it. People could help. You could help people understand the same exact. They're having the same questions. They were on TikTok. They were seeing the conversations. They were seeing the questions. And at that time, there wasn't a lot of voices explaining what was going on. And so that's why I started making the content.
Well, I'm glad you have made the content. It's been really it actually has been helpful. Your friend was right on about that. Which kind of
Good.
already answers the question that I was gonna ask you next, which was from Kimiko Sorayas, said, "What motivated you to become a content creator?" So it sounds like that was the main impetus, really.
Yeah, I never wanted to be a content creator. I never meant to be a content creator. I didn't think of myself as one. And even like making videos, my goal and objective has always been to just explain what's going on. And, especially because Nag and I talk about this all the time, that the headlines are wrong.
Mm.
They're not explaining what's going on. And I never really paid close enough attention to cases to know if the headlines were saying it wrong until I'm like reading the document and then seeing the headlines and just like, what? People are basing their perception of this case based off of that. And so that kept me going because I felt a call to do this. Like, okay, we need more people dispelling what's actually being reported by mainstream media on something that I can break down for them easily. So it was never really so much about being a content creator, and it actually didn't attach that. Phrase to myself for a long time because I was like, well, I'm not a content creator. I just make TikToks about the law. And someone was like, yeah, same thing. So yeah, so I didn't like really that was kind of cognitive dissonance for me for a long time because I really viewed it as like, no, like we need to like people don't understand how this works. I just need to explain it to them. I'm teaching them what this is. And I mean, that is my content, and that's why whenever I do something that's like slightly off of the law, I feel totally out of place. Like a lot of people are like, do a skincare tutorial or whatever. And I'm just so out of my depth. I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. This is not, this is not me. I mean, it is me, but like not on this base. But anyway, so yeah, so now, yes, I've embraced that I'm a content creator, but my content is all just explaining the law.
Yeah. And you mentioned something about just seeing the headlines, and it really has changed even myself because of hearing what you and Nag have said and other folks that are in the law field, right? Just going, my word, how many times have there been things on like newspapers or articles, things that are written that have been incorrect?
Mm-hmm.
And we just took it as
Took it.
for what it
Yeah.
was at that time, or because we're thinking, oh well, they know what they're talking about, but maybe they didn't at all.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's been eye-opening in that sense. So Sarah from Yarn and Order asked the question, what made you want to be an attorney, and what job would you have if you weren't an attorney?
Mm. Um, I didn't set out to be an attorney. I set out to be a doctor. And then I was just super drawn to my like social studies and governance type classes in college. Um, so even though I always had it in me to argue my point and be persuasive verbally, and reading and writing was always strong for me, I didn't set out to be a lawyer. Didn't think of myself as one necessarily. Um, and so I went to college as a biochem major thinking I would become a doctor. But then, like I said, I was sort of drawn to these other courses, and advocacy sounded more interesting. And I was particularly interested in this concept of justice
Mm.
and really, really drawn to it and wanting to understand it. How do we get there? How do we uphold it? How do we as a society get to a point where we have justice? And so kind of on a philosophical level, that's what really drew me to want to practice law. I didn't have like a set career in mind. I even like had some maybe false expectations of what the career might be. I was like, I'll be a human rights lawyer or something like that, which doesn't, it exists, but not in the way that I thought it exists.
Mm.
And so I didn't really fully understand what I was going to do with it. But I was drawn to this idea of seeking justice. And I realized that this has always been something very important to me, was seeking justice and fairness and equity and equality. And so once I kind of realized that those are things that I care a lot about, it made a lot of sense for me to go to law school. And become a lawyer. I didn't know that I would do employment law. I didn't know what I would end up doing necessarily. And I wasn't one of those people that's like, I've always wanted to be blah, blah, blah. I wasn't one of those people. And I still feel like I'm navigating what do I want to be when I grow up. But yeah, I do feel that law was the right calling. If I wasn't a lawyer, I had like fantasies of doing things like be an international correspondent for like CNN or BBC, or something that I would require me to travel, or something and totally different, like head of a creative organization, like a chief of staff, or a chief editor in chief of a magazine or something. Like I had all these like maybe journalism related type things that I probably would have gone into.
The irony of like maybe we would have needed you there too with the journalistic
Yeah.
stuff, having journalistic integrity and making sure things are properly vetted and properly
Well, here I
researched
am
and
marrying the
investigated.
two, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I love that. The next question is from L Man LM. Said, "What is one of the most interesting or memorable moments you've had as an attorney? Good, bad, shocking, or funny?"
Oh man, there's so many. I mean, you guys have sort of seen a flavor of this in the case, but as an employment attorney, um, you get to read all the text messages between people, and it's just astounding to me the things that people will say to each other when we tell them this is all discoverable. Or, if you get sued, we're going to see all of them. And so I've seen a lot of very interesting text messages. People do crazy things at work, and I get to see all of that. I can't even I can't talk about them without violating client confidences. So that's probably not a fun answer. But I'll give you a personal anecdote. I was litigating a case that the partner, it was really early into my career. I was really junior, and we had to preserve a trial date. And the partner I was working with flew to Chile to go skiing. And he was like, you need to fly to San Diego and preserve this trial date. And I was like, okay. So I go down there. I'm so nervous at that like this feels like such a big deal. I need to make sure the trial date doesn't move. I'm like 2 years into my career, and I know I don't barely know what I'm doing. I'm like so nervous, and I get called up and I come to speak, and it's like a full courtroom, and I just got dry mouth, and I could not utter a word. Like could not say anything, and I'm coughing, and I was just I was like, "Where's the water?" And there's always like a pitcher of water on the desk in the courtroom. And so I'm like nervously pouring the water and chugging it to make sure that I could like I basically squeaked my argument out. And here I am also getting more nervous because I'm like, I'm gonna lose this motion, and then the partner's gonna come back and he's gonna be so pissed. And so it was a disaster. It was a total disaster. Luckily, we preserved the trial date, so I prevailed, but I don't know how, by some grace of God. But ever since that happened to me, before any hearing, I would chug a whole bottle of water just to make sure that I was fully hydrated and that there was no chance that I would lose my voice in the middle of the hearing. And it never happened again, but yeah, that was memorable.
Well, I mean, that's so funny now that there is that backstory. If not that I'll ever see you in court, but if I ever did see you in a courtroom and I see you chugging water right before, no,
You'll know
I'll
why.
know why. So,
Yeah.
Rachel's view, who's a bocce bestie, wanted to know what or who has influenced you to be so emotionally restrained, especially given the backlash you've faced.
Mm. I don't know that I can attribute it to one person. I think there's a lot of people in my life that I look up to. Some of the people I learned from, my mentors in the profession, the ones that were super, super successful litigators always had a cool, calm, and collected demeanor. Um, Litigating is stressful and can get the best of you. And and it can be personal when it doesn't need to be. You know, I remember one of my early cases that I litigated and went to trial. The other side was just really, it's actually the one where I got my name, Little Girl Attorney.
Mm.
They just did everything that they could to rattle me and stress me out. And the only way to really prevail in those settings is to be kind of dispassionate and emotionally checked, I guess is the best way to put it. So I followed the lead of the people I really admired. Is like, you cannot get emotionally invested. It's hard not to, but if for the benefit of the client, you have to be dispassionate about what you do and advocate zealously on their behalf, and anything else just needs to be just wash off of you. So I don't, I think I can name a few of the people that I really admired that I worked with that were like that. Um, m- but also it's just what I grew up with was that you don't, play, you don't throw stones, and that's that kind of mentality, that kind of way of being raised, I think also influence the fact that like you have your objective, and that's the most important thing, and you don't lower yourself to a lower nature. You focus on the task at hand.
Yeah. Um, I think that that's a powerful thing in the sense of it is a difficult thing, right? To rise above things. So to be able to go, okay, this is something in essence, because you said you were raised to think about, like, um to respond in this particular way. I think it says a lot about having that kind of continued, I don't know if practice is the right word, because but kind of, right? Like you get
Hmm.
opportunities to live out the thing that you've been told to act
Hmm.
in a particular way. And sometimes you don't know if you're going to be that until you're given an
Hmm.
opportunity to live into that. So that's always a cool thing. I'm sure your parents are thrilled that they I mean assuming it came from your parents, maybe it didn't come from your parents, but um I'm
Yeah.
sure they're thrilled that they're like, okay, she's living into the things that we tried to put in her, growing up. So
Yeah. I mean, it goes to my like principles and the way I view the world and humanity. Like I have a personal belief that, I would love for a unified mankind. But how do you get that? You don't get that by fighting with people. unnecessarily. And if people are throwing stones at you because they're threatened by you, they're jealous of you, they're scared of you, they hate you, and you didn't do anything to deserve that, then fighting with them isn't going to bring about that unity. And so that's something that I just remind myself, like when people attack me, it's not me they're attacking something else about me, something that I'm representing to them. And so I tend to deal with it with humor because it helps me get through it. Honestly, like I just think it's funny that some people like, why are you so obsessed with me? Like, I don't.
I now have that Mariah Carey song playing in my head.
Like I don't get it. I don't think about you, but so like there's some humor that helps me get through it, and some I'm also human. Sometimes it will impact me, but the way that I try to move through the world is to not be the source of that pain to
Mm.
other people. And even if someone is throwing it at me, I try to understand that like if it's not actually harming me,
Mhm.
if it's not actually doing something that is a disservice to me that I need to step up and like, then I need to uphold justice. But that if it's not real, if it's just chatter, then there's no point in really engaging with it.
Yeah. There's wisdom in that.
Hmm.
The next question is sparkling through. When did you get the travel bug, and what has been your favorite place to visit?
Oh, I love this question. Yeah, I haven't shared much about my travel, but I guess you could kind of see in my travel books. Um, I love traveling. When did I get my travel bug? Maybe I can attribute it to growing up. My parents would always try to take my brother and I somewhere. So they instilled the curiosity in travel at an early age. We didn't do a ton of traveling, but like if we went on like one trip a year, that was always very memorable, something I always wanted to repeat. And so that kind of opened up my wanting, and even internationally, we were lucky enough to go to a few places internationally growing up. And so I think that really sparked my desire and curiosity to travel. Um, and so and then after college, I moved abroad. I studied abroad. And so that opened up the ability to go a lot of places that I hadn't been before, and it just kind of blossomed from there. Favorite place is always hard for me to answer that, but a couple years ago, I went to Japan,
Ooh.
and I have not stopped thinking about it since I came back. Like I truly, it's one of the few places I've been to that I'm like, I have to go back. I don't know how or when, but I just have to go back. I usually prefer to go to places I haven't been, rather than a place that I have been. But Japan, I was like, no, I just didn't get enough time there, so I will be going
How
back.
how long did you get to stay?
I was only there for like 10 days when I
Mm.
went, but visited 4 cities in 10 days.
Yeah. Oh, I was there for 14 days with my niece. We went to Tokyo, Kyoto, and Osaka, and
Mhm.
and it was great. I did want to go to places where it was near water in the next time I go
Mhm.
back, but I will say I just came back from a vacation myself. I went to the Philippines, Singapore, and Taiwan, and I was in Taiwan
Nice.
for 7 days. I wish I was there for 14 at the very least, because I would
Nice.
love and I wanna go back to Taiwan. And just
Mm.
like Japan, the reason I love Taiwan, 2 things, their bathrooms, public bathrooms,
Yes.
just like Japan, and then also public transportation, just like Japan. Like,
Mhm.
the ability to I mean, except Taiwan is smaller, so you can travel,
Mhm.
like, the whole country fairly easily, and, and I, love that so much. Public
Yeah.
transportation changes lives, I mean,
Oh,
honestly,
yeah.
but
Oh, yeah.
that's so cool. What was it about Japan for you specifically, or do you recall?
Um, I mean, aside from the obvious, like the bathrooms, the food,
Oh, yes.
I love Japanese food. I'm obsessed with Japanese food,
Mhm.
but the culture,
Yeah.
the respect, there. I know that Japan has problems too, obviously, but I just really appreciated the respectful culture. and like they respect everything and their attention to detail and respect for each other. And I really, really liked that. I thought that was, I really liked being kind of around it and seeing it. Um, but yeah, it's also just a beautiful, vibrant, full country with lots of different things and obviously really, really good food.
Yeah. Did you get to go on the bullet train?
I did. Yeah, the Shinkansen,
That was
yeah.
fun.
Yeah.
That was fun.
Yeah.
Um, Even though at one point it did stop for my niece and myself, and we're like, "What's happening?"
No, no, don't stop, keep going.
It was fun though. It was definitely fun. So this question is from Echo, one of my bocce besties, and Echo wants to know, what are your thoughts on the idea of people being on teams in this situation?
Mm. It's interesting. I mean, at the beginning when I was making content, there weren't really teams. It happened really quickly, but I didn't perceive there to be a need for teams at that time because I was just there being like, this is I mean, it was so early. We had a complaint and then we had a cross complaint and that was it really. And so I thought it was a little bit strange early on when people had chosen teams. That being said, I know that there was this whole summer of people watching what was going on with the movie premiere that I wasn't paying as close attention to. And so I realized that there was emotions involved in that because people, especially Book Talk, felt a particular way about the movie, about everything about it. And I think it's natural for people to pick a side or pick a team. Um, I always said that my bias comes from my training. And the fact that I'm a defense attorney is going to make me find generally, um, if all things being the same, like in favor of the employer, if I view the facts to support the employer. Um, so I never declared a team. I know people have declared a team for me, but which is fine. As a kind of a general thing, I can understand that people align themselves with maybe who they feel most who they resonate with the most. And if you're kind of outside of the law, I can understand why you would do that. For me, I'm really looking at it as if I was representing these sides. And so for me, if I had to choose a side, I think I've said that I would rather defend Wayfair than represent Lively. That doesn't mean that I'm on Team Baldoni necessarily in the way that everybody else says, but it's just because of the way that I view the case. I'm thinking about it from a professional perspective. Like, if I had to do this work, which side would I prefer to do? Not necessarily in the same emotional way that some people feel like, well, this is like, I resonate, for example, with Lively because I was wronged in a workplace by a man, or I resonate with Justin because I've been screwed over by somebody in my past. I don't have those emotional attachments to this case in the same way because from the beginning I viewed it as a lawsuit and viewed it as where do I think the facts are where strongest, the legal arguments are strongest.
I In my interview with Neg, she had mentioned something about like how she's objective, um, and which is different than neutral. And I really love that differentiation of the reality that when you're doing law, you have to be objective. It does not mean people don't have emotions or thoughts or opinions or whatnot. But what kind of always brings you back as a common language is like, well, what does the law actually?
Exactly. It's a really, really good distinction because a lot of people have said, oh, you're not neutral or you're not neutral. Actually, I'm not the judge. I don't need to be neutral. I can have opinions about it and it doesn't matter because I'm not judging this case. It doesn't matter what I think about it. Only the judge needs to be neutral here. but objective, absolutely, because you have to, a good lawyer will be able to see the pros and cons of both sides. Even if you're representing a client, you should be able to anticipate the other side's best argument. And the only way to do that is to have a level of objectivity, even in your own case. And so we are trained as litigators to be that way. And it's easy to be objective when you're not being paid by any of them. You're not representing any of them. There's no attorney-client relationship with any of them. So it's easy for me to objectively look at the case and be like, who has the best arguments? And I'm entitled to feel that one of them has a better argument in one situation and one has a better in the other. And it doesn't make me not objective. It makes me opinionated, which I'm allowed to be.
Yeah. So Whitney in the Garden said, what did you think of Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni before this? And what opinions do you have of them now?
I'm laughing because people will probably not believe this, but I really just didn't care about celebrities before this case. I still don't care about celebrities. I'm not like fascinated by them. I find them generally to be annoying and like I don't follow them. I don't care what they do. So I've always been like a little bit removed from Hollywood gossip. Like people are like, "Oh, did you hear this, this, and this?" And I'd be like, "Nope," and I don't care. So I didn't have a lot of opinions about either of them. I watched Gossip Girl and like remember her being in it. And you know, I'd seen Jane the Virgin, and that's really the only thing that I think I've saw about of Justin before this movie came out. So I really didn't have any opinion about them personally. I might have some opinions about them now, but I won't share them.
Okay.
And the reason for that is that my content, everything, I just refuse to engage in anything that's like remotely like gossip. I think it can be unhealthy, and I don't want people to confuse what I say about the case with my own personal views on someone's that I don't even know. I don't even know these people. So I'm just making things up in my mind about them. I've never talked to them, so I don't know what they're really like. And I don't want to ever influence other people's opinion of them just because I have some kind of imagination of what they're like.
I mean, I think that's good advice in general. I think it's always good to not make up stories about people. You know, it's kind of an interesting thing when there are times where I go, if I say something in a video, I better have some factual backup to it. And I actually did a video earlier today because I'd watch videos and I ended up privating it because I realized, oh, wait a minute, I misspoke. That, you know, Ryan Reynolds actually didn't suggest this. You know, it was the audience that suggested this. So it changes the whole premise of my video. So I had to take that video down. And sometimes you've got to just be going, okay, if you're going to be a credible person, you have to be willing to to admit when you're wrong. Because if you're just willing to continue to like put out things that are inaccurate because it gets the views, it gets whatever, I mean, because I'm a great storyteller. That sounded, maybe that comes off, but I mean, I can create stories in my head too.
Yeah.
And so sometimes
we all can.
Sometimes I have to pull myself back, and sometimes people tell me certain things, and I'm like, where did you get that idea? And so sometimes I have to ask myself, where did I get this idea? And sometimes people call me out if I'm going beyond where I should in my imagination of certain things. So I think it's always something to watch out for. So I do think it's great advice to not make stories about people and, where there's no like facts behind it. With that said, The next question, because you said actually, I'm not the judge, but this person, Dima_9794, actually wants you to think about if you were to become a judge, what is the most important thing you would work on changing to make your court more efficient?
More efficient?
Mm-hmm.
I think I would put a really short string on litigants for things like I'd give them 5 pages to argue something. I'd give them 5 days to do it. Like I would just run a really, really tight ship, because a lot of the problems that come up are because parties fight for weeks on end. And I would just try to find a way to get them to resolve their little issues as quickly as possible. Some judges are good at doing this because they just don't tolerate some of the petty back and forth. You can't really like cap how many filings someone can have. You can't really tell them you can't file this or you can't file that. You can't ask for this. You can't ask for that. But there are ways to be like, okay, if you've got a discovery issue, then you need to go to this magistrate and the magistrate is going to deal with you. Like only come to me with a dispositive motion type of thing. So that would be a way to make maybe the court more efficient. I think courts are really, really overwhelmed. They all have hundreds and hundreds of cases. It's really, really hard to be a judge right now. Believe it or not, they're not that well paid compared to what they could be. And they're not well staffed because the courts, it's a public, right?
Mhm.
So any kind of public entity is really struggling with funds. And so it's tough to be efficient when you have, and you can't limit how many cases you get. I wish there was a way to kind of curb superfluous cases that shouldn't be filed. I wish that attorneys were a little bit better at that. But we're talking now about a systemic problem in the law that I don't know how I can solve as just a judge. But I think in particular, I would be very intolerant of unprofessional conduct in my courtroom, like mudslinging. And we've seen that in this case where it's in the letters that they're just like, and then he said this, and they're just trying to like jab at each other. And I think this judge kind of takes that approach too. It was just like, I don't care, tell me what the actual issue is and rules on the actual issue. Because at the end of the day, getting caught up in the emotions around the case is a waste of time. You really just want to resolve the issues that are before the court.
Wow. I hear you on that. I love the put a cap on some of these pages because my word.
Mhm.
Um,
And there are page limits. Most courts have page limits on every kind of filing, but
and then
I
they
would
get
make them even
a letter
smaller.
requesting if they could get
Yeah,
approval to
exactly. Can
have it
I have
a
more
little bit
page?
more, 2 more pages, please.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
This
Yeah.
one is from Matina. Says, why do you think we haven't seen any of Jed's reports yet, especially since they could potentially support or refute the idea of a smear campaign?
I am not as familiar with the reports and how they're being used in this case. So I wouldn't be able to answer that without taking another look at where those came in. What are they? Um, is he making a report as an expert? I have a lot of questions about that. I don't off the top of my head know exactly what that's referring to, so I can't answer it.
All right. Thank you. Um, GGR17 said, is there any scenario where the New York Times would have to answer for its role in this situation?
There's one obvious one, and that's if there is an appeal as to the order dismissing them. That's kind of one immediate where there could be a situation where the whole dismissal of Wayfair's claims against New York Times and the others gets appealed, and an appellate court reviews whether or not that was correctly decided. If they deem that Judge Lyman did not decide that correctly for whatever reason, did not use his discretion correctly, then it would go back and then the New York Times gets pulled back in. That's kind of the first and immediate obvious situation that I could see the New York Times being quote unquote held accountable for their acts here.
Mm. Um, this is not one of the questions listed, but it just made me think about it real quick. But how much could things with Van Zandt come in an appeal?
Not in an appeal.
Oh.
At an appeal stage, all the appeal court does is review what the trial court did. So the appeal court would look at the dismissal of the motion to dismiss and determine whether or not the court applied the correct standard and used its discretion correctly in making that decision. And if I'm not mistaken, there was no Van Zandt mention at that point
Mm.
in the case. So there wouldn't be any new evidence that would come in to support. And anyways, at a motion to dismiss stage, you're not looking at evidence. You're looking at allegations. So what the appeal court would determine is whether or not, for example, Wayfair should have been given an opportunity to amend.
Mm.
And so that might be a consideration, but it wouldn't be looking at outside evidence to make that determination. It'd be looking at what the trial court had before it in making that determination.
Could there be a way to bring in Van Zandt on a different way to the new in regards to the New York Times, or no? It's just a moot point.
It's not a moot point, but it will require some creative lawyering. It's not going to happen through an appeal
Mm.
of that order. With respect to the New York Times, there is this New York State action. They have brought an anti-SLAPP lawsuit. There could be discovery in that case. Wayfair could always file an abuse of process claim
Oh.
against I don't know if it's the New York Times, because I don't think it was them that issued Van Zandt, but they issued it, I think it was it Jones's attorneys or Lively's attorneys, whoever it was at this point. They could file an abusive process claim there with respect to Van Zandt, and that would maybe bring in the New York Times as a co-conspirator or whatever. There are other ways that Van Zandt could come into play if Wayfair so chose to do so. But with respect to appeal, it would not be a factor.
Thank you. I was like, since we're here, I just want to know.
Of course.
And this one is, and I'm just going to spell the name because I'm not sure how to say it. It's SAGHARFORUHI17. Says, do you think Friedman made a mistake by not amending Baldoni's complaint? And could that impact Justin's ability to recover legal fees?
Addressed that in my video today. Um, no. It's not just Friedman's call to not amend. It's the client's. The client has the ultimate say. If the client didn't want to amend, then he doesn't amend. We don't know what he advised the client because that's in a black box. We don't know what conversations Wayfair and Brian Friedman had when the claims were dismissed. The amendment would have been for the contract claims only, not the other claims. So maybe they looked at it and they're like, is it worth it for us to amend the contract claims? It doesn't seem like it is. We're not going to do it. I'm guessing. I don't know what conversations they had. I wasn't part of it, and we'll never know because that's all privilege. But the thing that didn't get amended are those contract claims. And ultimately, that is a client decision with the advice of counsel. So what that looked like, I don't know. But I don't think we can fairly, we as in us lawyers, we can fairly sit here and say that that was incorrect or correct. Because ultimately, it's their decision and their strategy, and we don't know where it's headed. We don't know where it came from. We don't know what they're thinking or doing. So I don't know. Don't know if it was the right or wrong decision.
Yeah, and I do recall actually Brian Friedman on a show prior to the not doing an amendment saying that they were going to amend. And so that's why people were like, what happened? Didn't he just make a case that they were going to amend and they were going to do all these things, and that the judge gave them the roadmap to how to amend this thing? And so people were,
And that might indicate that he thought they should amend.
Mhm.
But, you know, there's other considerations that people are not paying attention to. It's not free.
Mhm.
Maybe Wayfair was like, well, I don't know if I want to spend another $100,000 amending my contract claims. I'm not trying to get money from Ryan Reynolds and Lively. I just want my name cleared.
Mhm. Mhm.
Maybe that was the analysis that they had. They were like, do we really want to deal with this too? Like, I don't know. We don't know.
Mhm.
And so if Brian Friedman went out and said, like, oh, we're going to amend, then maybe that's what he thought they would do, or maybe that's what they were going to do. And then ultimately, and also, I think somebody pointed out somewhere that there was a lot going on in the case. There was a lot of discovery. There was a lot of cost. There was a lot of effort being put to defend the case. And it makes sense that they sat there and looked at what was in front of them, and they're like, do we really want to fight this battle too, when we really want to focus on this other thing? That's ultimately the client's decision.
Yeah. Understood. um,
I get why people are pissed about it, but like,
yeah. But it is a good reminder too that it was just a contract portion that was still remaining at that point anyway. So none of the what like non-lawyers would
Mhm.
think is the juiciest part. None of it was
Yeah,
like stayed
exactly.
anyway. So um
Yeah.
the next question is at Julianne089 said, how do you reconcile litigation privilege protecting certain claims while also allowing things like anti-SLAPP motions or future claims that could jeopardize a party for bringing a case?
This is a really good question. It really is. You could write an entire PhD dissertation on this question. So I can't even do it justice by trying to answer it here in a nutshell. This is one of the complexities of law when different things conflict with each other. You know, litigation privilege, there you think about what are the benefits of these things. There's a reason why we have litigation privilege, because if you didn't, then it would chill the effect to utilize the courts to, you know, get your rights heard. So you have it, but it has, so everything has its kind of drawbacks. And then you have these anti-SLAPP statutes, SLAPP statutes. So I'm not going to attempt to answer this in a real way, because it would not be fair to the person who asked it if I give a high level non-response. But it's something that we think about. Lawyers often think about, is like, how do these things fit together? How do we reconcile, and what are the like pros and cons of having these things? And ultimately our legislature decides that. So local elections are important.
Yeah. Is this something like whenever, for example, there's been two questions I've asked that are much deeper reach. Um, is there ever a possibility in the future that any of them can inspire a video answer from
Yeah,
you?
I mean, if I can find the time to like do a deep dive, yeah, like for sure. It's, and I need to like just make a mental record or physical record of it so I don't forget. But yeah, some of this stuff is like really interesting, but it requires some research and thought and analysis. And I just don't think a flippant response would be fair for a question like this, because they are, some of them get to our morals
Mm.
as a society, and it gets to our, what are we protecting
Mm.
ultimately? And at the end of the day, these things are there and we have to navigate them. So often lawyers are like, I can't deal with the fact that we have it, I just need to deal with the fact that it's there, and this is how we deal with it. So yeah, we should pin it for another
Yeah.
day.
Thank you. Just wondering,
Yeah.
because if it is that nuance and that deep, it's like, "Ooh, what would your answer be?" But I also
Mhm.
know that this is not like your full-time job, and you have other things that take your time, so I don't
Yes.
know how deep of a dive these things would entail, so if it's like hours upon hours upon hours, I understand why you'll be like, "Maybe not a video," because it might take too much time. Um, so this is the final question from other folks before we begin to wrap up. But the question is, do you think Justin Baldoni will appeal Judge Lyman's dismissal of his case against Lively and Reynolds or walk away? And even if Wayfarer wins, how much does public narrative still shape the outcome? And this is from Beth O'Neill,
Mm.
dash Z6X.
I don't know if they will appeal the dismissal. We just talked about the fact that they chose not to amend. I mean, I don't know. I don't know that they know. They don't have to make that decision right now. And a lot of these things, the decision that you have
Yeah.
now is very different than the decision you'll have in 6
Mm.
months, depending on what's going on with the case. So I can't predict that. I don't think anyone can fairly predict that because they themselves don't know. If they prevail, what was the second part of that question?
The second part of the question says, and if Wayfarer wins, how much does public narrative still shape the outcome?
I think that's why this case is so interesting because it almost doesn't matter what happens in the court. I've seen this firsthand with how we perceive the filings.
Mm.
It almost doesn't matter how the judge rules. The public is going to see what they want to see in those rulings. Some of that is organic. I would say most of it is organic. Some of that is PR
Mm.
from both sides and them, pushing narratives, which is something that has always happened, but now is front and center in a case like this. So I almost think it doesn't matter what the outcome is because the PR people on both sides are going to be thinking of how to position whatever the outcome is in their favor. And so the PR trial is going to continue
Oof.
past this case because there will always be a spin, there will always be a headline, there will always be talking heads that are going to be saying something about the case despite what the actual black letter says. So, I think if Wayfair wins, I don't think Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds are just going to lie down and wave a white flag and say, yeah, mea culpa. That's not going to happen. I don't think it'll happen the other way around. So I think public perception still will be influenced a lot by how the parties handle
Mm.
themselves through trial. And I think it'll be super interesting to see how a non publicized or a non-televised, it's not non-publicized because it is public, but a non-televised trial, how that's going to be reported. Because as we've talked about, mainstream media is missing the mark. And I saw it when I went to the hearing and I read the articles after the hearing.
Mm.
I was there and I would have written different articles. And so I'm very curious how the trial is going to be portrayed to the public because that is going to be kind of it's already started, but that's really where the ramp up of the PR of this case is going to handle. So like if it looks like Lively is going to lose, you can believe that her PR team is going to make sure that it doesn't look like a loss, right? And vice versa. Same for the other side.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting because, again, when this whole case happened, I did not understand or know anything about PR, and now I can't unsee it. We saw how the
Mm-hmm.
sausage was made
Yep.
and it's like, I can't look.
The curtain has been
Thank
peeled
you.
back. Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely. So to wrap it up, first and foremost, I want to say thank you for joining me and spending
Of
time with
course.
me. And but how would people follow you? Like, what platforms can they follow you on or support you on?
Sure. Right now, I'm pretty much just on TikTok and YouTube. Actually, I'm on Reddit now.
You are strong. I tell people I avoid Reddit because I don't want to hurt my feelings.
Yeah, that's where all the feelings do get hurt. I'll tell you that. I'm not as active on there, if I'm being honest.
Like you
I
don't
do
want people
read. I
following you
try.
there. Oh, you do.
I mean, they can. I don't even know if you can follow people on there, but anyway, a lot of really, really smart people on Reddit. Truly, there's a lot of really smart people. There's a lot of also very mean people there. But anyway, but you won't find a lot of my content there. I don't put content there. I've made maybe one post and like 5 comments total. But you can find me on YouTube, Little Girl Attorney, and then on TikTok, my username is LIL Girl Attorney, Lil Girl
Okay.
Attorney, and that's only because TikTok did not like people searching quote little girl, which is fair.
Oh, yeah,
So that's
very
why
fair.
it's a little
Very fair.
totally fair. So that's why it's a little bit different there.
Okay, sounds good. And I just wanted to tell folks that my next guest will be C Journalist 24 in the next episode. And hopefully you have enjoyed this interview with Little Girl Attorney. Again, thank you so much for your time. It's always appreciated. And
Thanks for having me.
yeah, absolutely. If folks enjoyed this, please like it. And if you haven't subscribed to me, please do. And also, of course, subscribe to Little Girl Attorney. I'm going to be putting all the links for the YouTube and TikTok on in the description of this video. All right. Thank you so much. Bye.